questions or comments? Yes.
Who are the Vasus? I never understood.
Vasu was a race in the, just near Gujarat. So those are Vasu. Oh, you know Vasu? Oh, okay. Vasus are celestials, one of the Gandharvas, who were doing picnic in a garden where in the outskirts of the ashram of Vasishta. They came across Nandini, the cow, which was endowed with beautiful omens that anybody could see. And they were so enamored with her beauty and her attributes that they had seen happening in front of their eyes. They thought that would be a good gift to give to Mr. So-and-so, who was their second cousin. So they pack it up in a nice package and send it to him when that's what happened. So, yes.
They stole, basically.
Yeah.
Why does Duryodhana refer to Dronacharya as twice born? What's the significance of that?
Well, I don't know why exactly he said that, but Dronacharya was born in the Brahmin family. And rest of them were Kshatriyas. So, Dvija, even though it is, we do the Upanayanam for all the different subsects in the social classes, Dvija is a specific term used for Brahmins. So that's why, in order to give him a higher position, he called him Dvija, that's all. I don't think there's any other reason. Because theoretically, even the Kshatriyas are Dvijas.
The social status so-called in those times.
Could be, yeah. Yes.
You kind of mentioned about Ekalavya, and then in my mind, Ekalavya was also denied training because of his birth. And Karna was also denied training, but Karna kind of got away with it. Why was Ekalavya sort of denied? Why did he end up with, losing his thumb? And was there some past karma that we don't know?
I don't know the past karma, but of course the story, as you know, is that you can get the knowledge by putting your teacher in front of you without being in constant contact with him or her as well. So he was so fascinated of becoming as powerful an archer as anyone of his time that he put Dronacharya's tasveer in front of him, picture in front of him, and imagined that he was learning from him. And he did manage to get a tremendous amount of skill. And Dronacharya was impressed with his prowess, but typically the professors have a tendency to protect the success of their students very much and make sure there are no upstarts in the community who can beat them up. So obviously anybody who accepts somebody as a teacher, it is a social obligation on his or her part to give something in return, and preferably give something that what he wants. So when he came down to take the blessings from the Acharya, that, I learned it, thank you for giving me the knowledge, Dronacharya realized how much he had gained without his actual presence, and he wanted to nullify. To me that was inappropriate, but of course, who am I to say in the 21st century what was the social custom at that time? But the thing is, as I mentioned to you, you learn good things from good teachers, and also learn other things which are not good from the teachers who show the examples. So still education. Yes?
Well, just you talked about, this is probably a loaded question, but you talked about Draupadi having 5 sons, 5 kids from each of the 5 husbands. I mean, it appears that during that time, polygamy for men was a given. I mean, Dasharatha had, many wives, and more than one wife, so did Pandu had, and Krishna 16,000 we know about. But, for a woman to have 5 husbands was, it's the first time that, I've read about at that time. I mean, is there any symbolism to them, or to the whole concept, or, it's just, feels really weird,
I don't have the answer except...
I'm in a 21st century woman, so, it is going to feel weird. But, I mean, is there, because I've asked this question, I've tried to, but I haven't gotten a good answer about it at all.
I think that's all right. I have not found any similar reference or any other polyandry at that particular time. But I take it in this particular spirit is that there was so much amount of respect of the elders that whatever karishye vachanam tav, so whatever the parents say was taken as an order. So when mother says, without seeing a gift was born, make sure that the gift is shared by everyone, not knowing that the gift was a human being that Arjuna had won in that contest. But if that was done, like Harishchandra kept the words and Rama kept the word, look, what Kaikeyi was asking was not rational, you see what I mean? But Rama still took up that particular task because he wanted to make sure his father's word don't come right. So that must be the only reason.
But Draupadi was such a strong woman. I mean, so was Sita. I mean, they were, two very strong women, and for them to just accept it,
Well, I think you're a good point, but let me make a point very clear. And we have discussed with many scholars over the years. In the 9th chapter, there's kind of a slang which is Triyo Vaishyas Tata Shudra. All of them can ultimately reach the moksha. What do you mean Triyo Vaishyas Tata Shudra? That means they're putting women folks down, and that probably reflected the social custom at that time. Again, we can't criticize them, we can observe them, but learn from the history, but act in the present, so the future will be better. So that's the way I look at it. And in that particular context, that's, even though she was strong, the women folks, children were considered the property of their husbands, fathers, and their sons. Unfortunate it was, but you take it as a historical event, but grow up from that in the present time. Maitri, you're saying?
Yeah, I heard, because I also read about that, and I heard that because she represents Mother Earth and the 5 elements were the 5 suns, and that's how they explained it away. And there was some amount of equality too, because they say that Mahabharata talks about equality, but also organic. So it went both ways. I mean, anything goes in the name of that.
Equal rights.
Well, basically, I call it spades, I don't know.
So that's how it is.
But if you look at the society right now, the world,
well, that's the sad part about it, right? It is the sad
yeah,
part.
you can talk about it, we can argue, we can discuss, but at the same time, sometimes we do have to accept the fact.
I know. But here's the deal with me. I always took pride, and I still take pride in our rich heritage and our culture. And any time, there's a debate about, I always stand up that no, Hindus always treated women, equally and women with grace, and I give examples of Draupadi and Sita. But, when it's time about, she having 5 husbands, that's where my mouth just sits up, because I don't have an argument with that.
Well, I think you got to remember, being a physician, I certainly know that I cannot criticize the brilliant medical scientists 200 years ago, because they were operating with the knowledge and understanding and maturity that they had at that time. So that if we were to practice the same medicine now, that would be considered malpractice. So it doesn't bother me. I take it as a historical fact and move from there, rather than dwelling ourselves in the past. Why? I'm not a psychiatrist where I want to say why did they do that. But what I'm trying to is learn from it and forget it. That's not the way you're going to do it.
Discussing it,
Yeah. Yes.
Can you explain more about moksha and jnana? I thought moksha was the ultimate everybody wanted to achieve. And this is something new for me.
Uh-huh.
And I want to just, if you can elaborate those two.
Well, first comes the jnana, and then comes the moksha. When you have the knowledge, who you really are, and what your relationship with the Supreme Lord is, then that understanding itself liberates you. And liberation is moksha. So once you understand you are Sat Chit Ananda, and it's not just not learning in the classroom or reading in the book, but you feel it at every possible level of yours, physical, mental, intellectual, spiritual, emotional, in every possible way. And you put that knowledge in every action that you undertake, every word that comes out of your mind, every thought that comes to your mind, every desire that you entertain. then that knowledge has become your second nature. And that understanding, which goes through every part and parcel, every cell of your body, then that state is the mukta, freedom, state of freedom, and that's moksha. Okay? I mean, the thing is just a continuum of the same process. I mean, you might move on to that for a moment, you have that feeling of freedom for a moment, and you may regress for a while, but that happens to the time you actually get out of the rut, if you will, into a true understanding. Okay? Yes, please.
So, continuing the same question and what you discussed about prayer. When I say a prayer, Tamil Mata Chapita, I am saying that you are my father and you are my mother. So, should I be giving my wish list or should I be giving my report card? What I want or what I have done for him to be my father and mother?
Well, as a matter of fact, you don't have to give your scorecard because he and she knows about it. So that is superfluous. If you ask for what you want, then you become the authority. That means you are expecting something in return.
But he is my mother and father, so what's wrong with asking?
You can ask till the time you realize that you don't need to ask. For example, why doesn't God doesn't demand anything from the devotee? Because God needs nothing. So as long as you're asking, you think you don't have it. You have a need for it. And your mission, and again it's a slow process, that's why you have to go through 700 verses. You have to make sure that at every possible level, you understand that you need nothing. You can learn in one verse and that's all it really takes. But at the same time, the Upanishadic teaching is classic. The pramana is used over and over and over again. You see, even when you take a piece of sandalwood in your hand and smell it, you can smell it. But you have to keep on working on the stone with a touch of water till the real sandalwood paste comes. You see what I mean? So that takes time. So that's why you need kala. So even if you plant the seed, you have to wait for the sapling to come, the bush to form, the berries to develop that you can enjoy, or the sapling to become a tree to give you the fruits. So it requires efforts, and that's what we're doing. Kala, you have to be patient. You cannot live in an instant society to find the satisfaction, because it doesn't come easy. You say, prayatne valu se kana ragadata te lahi gaye. That means you have to keep on working hard, and you constantly churning even the sand particles, kana valu se. Then comes out the oil. But of course, at that time, my forefathers knew that offshore drilling will give you oil. But that's a different story. But the point there is that you have to work very hard. And even when it is as hard as the sand particles or the stone on which you make the sandalwood paste, be patient. It takes that much amount of time. And again, as the Upanishad teaching, you got to go over and over and over again. Then only you're able to put the chandan on top of it, and that becomes part and parcel. It becomes integral part of it. No, periodically you'll understand it. But then when we go in the real world, we tend to forget during the time. That's what the whole purpose is. You're saying something?
No. I will just enjoy.
Any other questions, comments?
Dr. Sani,
Yes, Bala.
the first, we have the 18th chapter, each one has a specific name as yoga. The Vishada Yoga, the first one, we call it as generally the despondency of Arjuna. Is there anything more to it than that,
No, I think these names, Anandi, are given by the scholars subsequently. Because it was a continuous poem that was said. And to make it easy for us to understand it, what is the main theme of this particular one? Arjuna shows discomfort, unhappiness, Vishada Yoga. He is kind of psychosis, he's kind of neurosis, where he is kind of completely overwhelmed with the situation that he just cannot handle. So that's all. I don't think there's any other thing. As a matter of fact, I'll have to go back to original text whether those subdivisions have the labels or not. I think they just are chapters. And the names were given afterwards. But in that case, what we should do is sing all the 10 verses and then stop. Okay? So that, we'll finish it. Dharmakshetre kurukshetre samavetaयुत्सवः मामकाः पाण्डवाश्चैव किमकुर्वत सञ्जय दृष्ट्वा तु पाण्डवानीकम् व्यूढम् दुर्योधनस्तदा आचार्यमुपसंगम्य राजा वचनमब्रवीत् पश्यैताम् पाण्डुपुत्राणाम् आचार्यम् महतीम् चमुम् व्यूढाम् द्रुपदपुत्रेण तव शिष्येण धीमता अत्र शूरा महेश्वासा भीमार्जुन समायुधे युयुधानो विराटश्च द्रुपदश्च महारथः दृष्टकेतुश्चेतितान काशीराजश्च वीर्यवान् पुरुजित् कुन्तिभोजश्च शैब्यश्च नरपुङ्गवः युधामन्युश्च विक्रान्त उत्तमौजाश्च वीर्यवान् सौभद्रो द्रौपदेयाश्च सर्व एव महारथा अस्माकं तु विशिष्टाये तान्निबोधद्विजोत्तम नायका मम सैन्यस्य संज्ञार्थं तां ब्रवीमि मे भवान् भीष्मश्च कर्णश्च कृपश्च समचिञ्जया अश्वत्थामा विकर्णश्च सौमदत्तिजय तथा अन्ये च बहवः शूरा मदर्थे त्यक्तजीविता नानाशस्त्रपहरणा सर्वे युद्धविशारदा अपर्याप्तं तवस्माकं बलं भीष्माभिरक्षितं पर्याप्तं त्विदमेतेषां बलं भीमाभिदर्शितं अयनेषु च सर्वेषु यथा भागम् अवस्थिता भीष्ममेवाभिरक्षन्तु भवन्तः सर्व एव हि